Hello, hello, and welcome to my thought on last Sunday, because Sunday is tomorrow, and I'm hoping that I'll do one on love in the next week. But this has been a very busy week, so you're getting this thought on Saturday from that was supposed to be last Sunday. I'm reminding you that I have a book, um, Getting the Last Laugh. You can get it on Amazon. And your Amazon, wherever you are. And it's about, I thought it was about starting comedy, but it isn't. It's about uh, overcoming obstacles and still making a good life. And that's why I want to do this particular thought. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Delancey Street. Delancey Street is now 50 years old. It started in San Francisco by a woman named Dr. Mimi Silbert, and it was meant to rehabilitate drug addicts, prostitutes, if they want rehabilitation, um, and ex-convicts. And it started, I think, with four people um, 50 years ago, and Mimi Silbert has been the guiding light of it. It has an interesting philosophy, which they also use, by the way, in curing eating disorders. It's a miracle, the things that Mimi Silbert, doctor, she's a PhD, have done for people. Among other things, she has a restaurant. They have a restaurant. Um, I think they have room for something like 500 people in the San Francisco facility, but they have a restaurant, and the restaurant is delightful and delicious, and the waiters are all ex-cons, drug addicts, and prostitutes, and they are the most wonderful people you've ever met. It's an absolute delight to dine at Delancey Street, although I'm sure that with COVID you can't dine there, although you might be able to be outside because San Francisco has lovely weather. They teach every convict three skills, and it says where the thing is, I think, how did it say it? Where hope begins. When you reach the bottom, they're the one that give you hope, and um, enter. That's right. And what is it? It's and enter with a history and leave with the future. Enter with a history, leave with the future. That's amazing, and it does it. But the discipline in it is frightening. In the beginning, and because I am going to tell you about a man who went through it and left. He couldn't stand it. And he is, I think, the bravest man I've ever met. If anybody has an addiction, you should know how extremely difficult it is to kick it. And life has to be very smooth for you not to slip back into the addiction. And so I'm going to tell you about a man named Colin who was part of Delancey Street. And it is his description of it that I am telling you. It is not necessarily there. I know that when I go there at the restaurant, and whenever I'm in San Francisco, I try to go. I love it. The people who wait on the tables, the people, the maitre d', the food is absolutely marvelous. It's all been prepared and created and sustained by ex-cons and drug addicts and prostitutes. But from what I understand, in the beginning, you have someone that's with you all the time to make sure that you don't fall from grace, and it's extremely disciplined. And if there is any violence, if there's any use of drugs or alcohol, you're immediately thrown out. There's no appeal. You just go. And my friend Colin was there. I believe the minimum stay is 2 years, and they usually last 4 before they get out. And when they get out, they have professions. They're truck drivers, they're teachers, they're manual skills, they're cooks, they can wait table. They also sell Christmas trees. They have a pick up a van service. Dr. Mimi Silbert is amazing in what she has created and what she's done with society's rejects, and she's made them part of society again. She has, I think it's 5 new homes. But Colin was in there, and I believe he was in there for 3 years. I'm just guessing, or 4. And finally he left. He couldn't stay. It was too protective a community, and he was a drug addict. He was not only a drug addict, but he sold drugs. And we became friends because I found him at the Punchline in San Francisco. He has a son, and he had come to the Punchline to get some comedy, and he met me, and we became friends. And I went to his home for dinner. His family were upper middle class or lower upper class. They were wealthy people living, I believe it was in Los Gatos, and I might have it wrong, but it's in Los Gatos. And they were extremely critical but benevolent with Colin. The mother was very protective of him. The father was extremely critical because he had been selling drugs and he was an addict. And so that when he left Delancey Street, attempting the best way he could to stay clean, they were no help because the father was demeaning him all the time, and the mother was protecting him, so that he never had a challenge where he had to. When I talk about the challenges that I had no one to help, and if I wanted to save myself, it had to be me. But he was constantly demeaned. The brothers were terrible to him. He was terrible. He had a it was terrible for him. But he managed in the 2 or 3 years that I was close to him to stay clean. He tried to be a truck driver, and he tried to get a license and had trouble. He tried to be a bus driver, and he also had trouble. And then somehow I lost track of him. And when I tried to get hold of him again, they told me that his father had died. And the same, in arranging the funeral for the father, his mother died. And he says, I was always a mama's boy because, of course, she protected him. And he went back into drugs. He was arrested. He spent some time in prison and went out and then fell back into it again. And the reason I say that he is very brave is because people who have addictions, it is so comforting to go back into your addiction. And I'm going to switch and tell you a little bit about what happened with my addiction. I was bulimic, and I was also anorexic. And when I would slip back into it, it was the most terrifying thing, but it also made me feel helpless, totally helpless, that the universe simply would not let me open the gate to being normal, open the gate to eating like other people, not having your whole life revolve around dinner, as mine did. I did not have serious relapses once I discovered what it was, but I can remember every relapse I had, and I am now 87 years old, and there were not that many, but I can tell you about them in detail. They never lasted more than a day, whereas my bulimic episodes lasted for several years. But once I realized that it was a mental disease and not because the anorexia, I would starve for 2 weeks and then I would eat more than 2 weeks worth of food. Once I realized that that was a mental disease, I absolutely refused to succumb to it. Colin did not have that same determination. And when things went belly up, and they were very bad, he couldn't seem to earn a living. His brothers treated him like garbage. They kicked him out of the house when he became an addict instead of trying to protect him. And he simply couldn't take the immense rejection. And that is why he sold drugs. He started selling drugs to earn money to use them. And now I have just gotten an email from him. I had given up trying to get hold of him, and he is hoping to be clean. What the world doesn't understand is that with addicts, as I am one as well, the whole world is your therapist, and the whole world has to help you. And if we don't have compassion for those who are doing what you think is stupid and non-productive because they're sunk into alcohol or drugs, and instead of understanding that they're fighting a battle they cannot win alone, we reject them. And Mimi Silbert, of course, didn't reject them. She offered an extremely rigid method of recovery. My method of recovery was different. When you're an alcohol or drug addict, you can remove the products you're addicted to from the house. When you're bulimic, you cannot remove food. You have to eat it. It's your life. But my will and my determination to rise above the negativity in my life is what kept me from succumbing to the bulimia and letting it last more than 24 hours. I can still remember, when I think about it, it's a miracle that I actually don't start crying as I talk to you, the terror when I would fall from grace, when I would have a bulimic episode. Um, Drug addicts don't have the terror because the drug is the escape, and they go. So that's why I say Colin is now trying for the third time. I don't believe in prayer, but I do believe that that if this, and he no longer has Michelle. People have robbed him. People have taken advantage of him, and he is not a man to trust other people, because every time he did trust, he was betrayed. But the other problem with all of us who are addicts is we think someone can save us. And until Colin realizes, and I think he does, that the only person that can save him is him, he is going to go back into it again. I am, and I said I don't believe in prayer, but I am, let's say, hoping fervently that the society around him realizes that unless they give him support, they're going to have another person taking up space in a prison because he's going to sell drugs to finance his habit. Unless someone shows him that he is, and convinces him that he is of value, he will become an addict again. I had people who helped me, and they did not help me because they didn't know about the bulimia. I think people who have eating disorders keep it a secret. You can sort of see it since they turn into skeletons and they eat funny whenever you go there. What helped me was Stanford University. I went back to Stanford University. I was all alone. I was 30, and I was ostensibly over the addiction, but I was not. When I look back, this is such a disheartening thing for all of you who are struggling with eating disorders. When I look back, I called myself well when I was in my 30s. I wasn't well until I was in my 70s and started comedy. I am now really well because food is not the center of my life. It was always the center of my life. I was either fighting not to eat it or fighting. But Stanford University gave me the tools to live a more normal life, to not be a slave to my addiction. And the reason it did is I went back when I was 30. I had always heard that Stanford University was the top university of the country, and I believe it is. But of course I would, because of my experience. It's coeducational. Even though it's founded by the most conservative people, the Hoover Institution is there. It is extremely liberal and beautiful. And when I went there at 30, that was extremely old to go to college. And I had been away from school for eight years because I got another master's in education. But that master's did not involve any thinking at all. So when I went to Stanford, they said, well, you're going to have to get the undergraduate degree, and you're going to have to get the undergraduate requirements and then get the graduate degree in journalism, because I realized at that point that I had to support myself and that I would get no help from my family and I would get no help from relationships because I had none. And I worked like I have never worked for anything before. I was all alone. I had no friends. I was living in a cement block studio apartment, 1963. And I took my courses, retaught myself to study because they were very academic courses, took extra hours. I was told that it would take me about 2.5 years to finish. I finished in 14 months. And then after I finished my studies, I would write articles for newspapers from San Jose to San Francisco, which is many, many newspapers. There's lots of little towns, so that I could have, at that time we didn't have computers, so that I could have a string, which is a series of articles that I put carefully in a notebook labeled in the time, so I could show editors who would be very anxious to hire me because I graduated from Stanford, and all of you know that didn't happen. uh, I would be able to get hired because I would show them what a marvelous writer I was. And I did some very innovative things for the Sunnyvale Daily Standard. Believe it or not, that's the name of the name of the town, the paper. I took a youngster, a 10-year-old youngster who was the daughter of one of the policemen that was watching Foothill, that guarded Foothill College when the San Francisco Symphony came down to play. And I took her to the symphonies and I recorded her reaction. What I didn't tell you is most of the time she slept all the way through it, but I didn't tell you that in the articles. But the upshot is that I worked. I barely slept. I worked. I studied. I was determined to make something of myself. And in that 14 months, I never had a binge. I never missed a meal. And when I got out and expected the world to welcome me, it didn't, because I was 30, and they didn't hire women that were 30 and put them in middle management positions, and I had 2 master's degrees. They simply did not. And so then I became totally immersed in trying to find a job, and I was desperate. And I spent 6 months in San Francisco. Those of you who read the book, I don't think it's in the book. When I graduated from Stanford University with a prestigious degree in journalism, and I also had a prestigious, well, it wasn't very prestigious degree in a master's in education. When I graduated with all these marvelous honors, I ended up selling dollar flats, which were children's books, in Macy's book department, Macy's Christmas toy department. That was what I earned with my 14 months of frantic working. But and then I went to New York, and then I had a complete nervous breakdown and went back to Toledo and ended up teaching again. And some of that is in this book. Some of that is in this book. But it was that preoccupation with saving myself and no one to fall back on that kept me from binging and kept me from starving. Although I still had minor episodes, but that's what kept me from doing it. And I believe the thing that got me out of the recurring cycle that never ever stops was the success that I had at Stanford University, because I had all A's and B's. When you ask me how I did at Stanford University, I'll tell you I got all A's, but that's not true. I got A's and B's. I did well when I thought I couldn't. And when you're an addict, you think that you are worthless. And this goes back, now we go back to Colin. The problem with Delancey Street, there is, believe me, it does so much good that I don't want to badmouth it in any way. But the difficulty, the challenge is that she reduces, Mimi and her staff, reduce these people to nothing. They are considered worthless, and then they begin to build them into something. Stanford University didn't do that for me. Stanford University convinced me that I was worth it, that I was a star student, and I could do it. Stanford. And then when I got out, instead of having a mommy to run to and a daddy to run to because they cared not a whit, I had only me to run to. Now, Colin was running to mommy, and when mommy died, it just took the rug out from under him because there was nobody to run to. And from what I understand, Michelle, which was the girlfriend, robbed him and took, because he inherited money, which everybody took from him. He's lost it now. So that, it doesn't sound logical, but having one person that you count on, only one, that validates you as a human being, is a sure step to going back to the addiction. Colin is now alone. He's, from what I can gather, he's starting again. And all of you who know him, and I'm not going to say where he is, but who know him, I hope that they say it takes a village to bring up a child. It takes a village to stop an addiction. And for me, it took a university. I want to thank you again for joining me for my week late thought know that at 5:45 on Sundays, London time, I do so far fairly unsuccessful blog with Kate Copstick, who is one of the most interesting people you can ever hear, um, called called "Old Bitches Talking Shit," and if you can join us for that. Hopefully, Kate, you'll be able to see Kate this time. We've tried 3 times and we've literally failed, but it's always a good conversation. We'll be talking about feminist issues, ageist issues. Again, if you want to read about how I survived, you'll get a glimpse of it in this book. But know that I told you a few things that were not in the book. And thank you so much for joining me. And hopefully I'll get something about love in the next week. So happy Valentine's Day.